And so we know exactly which messages. Remember, the first thing that we're selling is that big idea and the key message. We know which big ideas and key messages are resonating to which target markets. And so we are able to now treat these different target markets with the proper messaging, depending on what the data is telling us as to what they like it or hate. And because it's such a brutal environment, the brutality is it either works or it doesn't.
Welcome to the Clear Brand Academy podcast, where we take the mystery out of marketing and help you get more leads and sales with a clear brand and proven marketing tactics. I'm your host, Josh Ramsey, and today we have Kurian Tharakan, who is the founder of the sales and marketing strategy firm Strategy Peak Sales and Marketing Advisors. He's a 27-year veteran of the sales and marketing industry and is also the author of the Amazon bestseller, The 7 Essential Stories Charismatic Leaders Tell, which details how anyone can move people and mountains with their power of story. Welcome to the show, Kurian.
Josh, thanks for having me on. You're my first podcast host out of South Africa, so this is going to be a treat for me.
Yeah, it's great to have you here. As a Story Brand certified agency, we are big fans of Story and definitely interested in how you use that to get leads and sales. So let's just dive into your kind of veteran background. 27 years here. What is that journey? Where did you start? Were you a freelancer, and how did you end up where you are now?
Well, as I'm in my late 50s now, and I ended up here like most people do, accidentally. So lots of zigzags, never a straight line. I started in sales. I got into marketing. I got into then sales and marketing as an integrated set of functions. And a lot of people that we work with, don't understand the difference between those two things, but they're very different. And they require different skill sets and different lenses to execute properly. I spent 12 years of my life in the mergers and acquisitions business, buying companies, selling companies, raising capital for companies. I was the sales and marketing guy on the team, sold the occasional business on my own, that kind of thing. And I will tell you, I've been in hundreds upon hundreds of boardrooms, and that was my single best experience with seeing what sales and marketing methods actually work instead of what people claim to work. Because you're looking at financial statements and you can see whether people are getting lift or whether they're struggling or whatever else it is, right? And then eventually I got out of that business, started my own agency. And right now we invested a few years ago in a digital marketing agency in town here. And we've got grew that from about 5 or 6 people to about 25 right now. It's a company called Social Light Communications. But unlike you, Josh, we're strictly in the Shopify e-commerce space. So you have to be an e-commerce merchant, direct to consumer. And all we do is 4 basic things for them, right? But story is a big part of it. I do the coaching for these merchants at the beginning. And the bottom line is that I say to people, the very first thing that somebody buys from you, the absolute very first thing is the big idea. And the big idea is a transformation story, how they get from point A to where they are today to where they want to be. And from the big idea, you have to have a series of key messages. And from those key messages and the big idea, you have to wrap all of that into a strategic narrative with your customer as hero. And so that makes you the fairy godmother, the wise wizard that grants the promise of the story, in a magic amulet or a magic sword or an incantation. And so that's your products. Those are your products. And so your products simply become the tools to fulfill the promise in the story that you tell. And so that's the basis of everything. If people don't buy your story, they won't buy anything else.
Okay, well, there's a lot in there, so I'm looking forward to unpacking it. I want to start off with if I was in an elevator with you for 40 seconds or 30 seconds and you had to explain the difference between marketing and sales. You said that people get that wrong at the start of what you were speaking about there. Let's start there. You got an elevator, is just doors are just closed. It's me and you, and I'm confused. Tell me how you define sales and marketing.
Well, I look at the analogy of a volleyball game. So marketing is the perfect set of the ball. Nice and high, center of the net, and almost anybody can spike it then. You come in and you can just spike that ball at will. And so if marketing is poor, that means the set is poor. And so if it barely is making over the net line, that's going to be a really tough spike. That's going to be very, very difficult. And so marketing is a set of the ball. And in a perfect world, you will commoditize sales to order taking. All the heavy lifting of persuasion and positioning and narrative and all that kind of stuff is done for you by the marketing team. And sales comes in and does the three things that salespeople are supposed to do. And salespeople do not persuade. That's not their business. Marketing's job is to persuade. A salesperson's job is to do three things, and only three things. Maximize the potential of the sale, minimize the time to close, and close. That's it. If they're spending time describing the product and persuading people and doing all those kind of things, trying to do marketing's job, salespeople are usually very poor marketers. Right? It's a different skill set. It's a different lens. And if they're doing that, that means that marketing has not done their job. So we want to be able to put all of those things to get a hot to trot qualified prospect in front of a salesperson that can do three things: maximize, minimize, and close.
Okay, I like that model. Maximize, minimize, and close. So if we take a similar lens onto the marketing team, what are those three skills? Are there three? Is it more than three? What's your perspective there?
I think the primary thing with marketing is to install the narrative. Right? You absolutely install the narrative in a properly qualified and targeted marketplace. And and there's so many different things that you will do around that, and eventually you might do a YouTube channel, and you might write some great sales copy and things like that. But ultimately, it comes down to installing a very potent narrative into a qualified, targeted prospect base. Those are the two things that you're supposed to do.
Okay, so it's installing that narrative and then making sure that you've got the right client, the right customer lined up. That they're qualified and that they can then
they have the
spiked
motive
upon in the best of ways by the sales team.
Exactly. The client base that you have, the prospect base, at the beginning, has the motive, the means, and the opportunity to bite down on what you're offering, right? It's sort of like the same thing that if you're a criminal detective, motive means an opportunity. But now we're using it in the way that a marketer can take advantage of the same kind of thing.
So for those companies out there that you're working in the e-commerce space, I think it's a great. You're obviously getting some wins there. You've grown that team. I don't know in what time frame. What time frame did you kind of grow that out? Have you guys been on a little rocket ship over there, or are you on a slow and steady climb?
Well, it's kind of interesting because I think you'll recognize this, Josh. Many marketing teams just sort of come together because they like marketing, and there's one or two founders that will do something and pull it together, right? And that was very much the case with Socialite Communications at the beginning. We have a very hard-driving, relentless founder in the business, right? And he brought on another individual about 2 years later, and then I showed up as the third partner about a year after that. And at the beginning, we're trying to figure out what our value proposition is, which differentiates us from the other marketers. And it was once we nailed that value proposition down, and so we did the hard right turn into e-commerce marketing and specifically on a Shopify platform. And that's what's allowed us that growth. Yeah. So when I came there in 2015, we probably had 6 or 7 people. We have maybe 30 people right now. I just finished hiring we also have an online learning portal called Merchant Mastery to help beginning Shopify merchants start their program. So get to $0 to $40,000 a month in sales, right? The agency deals with $1 million plus D2C clients on Shopify. It's always got to be on Shopify. But now we got a nice little distributed team. And I just hired a young lady out of Argentina. Southern California expat. She's in Argentina. She's on my merchant success team now. We have people all over the U.S. and Canada, right? The majority are here in Edmonton, but even they come in and they log in remotely. The vast majority of them. Most of them don't come into the office.
Yeah, we've got a remote team as well. I want to lean into the Shopify space if that's all right with you, because one of the things that we do at the Clear Brand Academy podcast is we really want to check out evidence, and I think ecom is great for numbers. You can run tests, you can see profits, you can see time on. There must be such rich data there that you can see and you can tweak. Am I interpreting that right?
Our merchants, let alone our agency, would not be successful without the data.
Yeah.
The data drives all the decisions that we make. And the beauty of e-commerce is the second by second information that you get back. So when you put out an email, and we like our emails generating 20 to 40% of our revenues. And of course, email is pretty much a free channel comparatively to paid advertising. And so we know exactly which messages. Remember, the first thing that we're selling is that big idea and the key message. We know which big ideas and key messages are resonating to which target markets. And so we are able to now treat these different target markets with the proper messaging, depending on what the data is telling us as to what they like it or hate. And because it's such a brutal environment, the brutality is it either works or it doesn't.
Yeah.
And if it works, could it work better? And could it work spectacularly? And those are the kinds of things that we want, where we get an 8-10 times ROAS on an initial blast, right? If we can do that. Not everybody does that, obviously, right? But now you've got the data saying, wow, that was really good. Let's do more of that.
Yeah. And then I guess at the same time, if you... So do you partner with these Shopify, with these businesses as a kind of outsourced marketing agency? Or are you coaching them? And I guess this is the lead up, because the question then is, you must have insights into so many different categories. You might have 10 shops that are all selling a consumable whatever, and then you can say, well, this email just worked really well for this company. Let's try it here. Is that kind of how you've built this? And
I often wondered. So we only do 4 things for our clients, right? We do offer strategy and positioning. We do email. We do advertising, digital advertising on social media channels, and we do conversion rate optimization on the website and the landing pages. Those are the only 4 things that are proven to move the needle. Now, the beauty of us, and if I were to start a business on Shopify now, there is no way I would try and do it on my own in the long run. I do it on my own to figure out what's going on, so I can give the agency a running start. But the beauty of an agency like ours is that we can bring to bear all sorts of information across a breadth of merchants. So it's not about steal this idea, but rather let's borrow the framework. And the framework is pretty straightforward, right? We're seeing things like this kind of countdown timer is working exceptionally well on food brands, direct-to-consumer food brands. Let's install that on all of our food brands, and so that works. We're seeing a lift of this. We're seeing declining sales with that, and so we're able to hybridize our knowledge across all of our. We've got 60 clients in our agency. And, we've got over 800 merchants in our learning programs called Merchant Mastery. And so we get to see a lot of very interesting things.
Yeah, it's a wonderful thing where you can then start turning that learning around from kind of one individual learning on one problem for one solution and kind of group thinking up all of those solutions and then distributing that back into everyone that you're serving, which is that's a very, very valuable thing.
That hybridization is invaluable, to be able to pick and pluck what is working today from across all these different types of instances.
Okay, so let's lean into that and let's explore this idea of I've been on Shopify for 6 months trying to get my market fit, and maybe I'm stagnating, maybe I'm not growing. What is the process that you would take a client through, a business through?
Well, it's interesting. I do a lot of coaching outside of direct to consumer as well. So I spend a lot of my time coaching new entrepreneurs, especially out of the university. So we have a local
Okay.
university, it's a research university. They're trying to bring different products to market, but these are engineers and scientists, literally, right? PhDs. They did not go to
Yeah.
school, to
Yeah.
learn to sell, but they're forced to sell. And so we
Yeah.
use a 5-circle model to tell them how this all works. And, every marketer, this, Josh, needs a Venn diagram.
Oh, yeah.
You need a Venn diagram. So these 5 circles touch together in the middle. There's a sweet spot in the middle, right? And at the very beginning, circle 1 is a customer understanding, a deep customer understanding of their pain and gain. What is absolutely painful to them? Where do they want to aspirationally get to? What's their gain state? And sometimes you're just taking them out of pain. And other times they don't have pain, but they want to get to gain. And so we have to be very clear in our understanding of what is driving the motives of that customer. I could care less about demographics. I don't care about demographics, right? I care about the jobs to be done to satisfy the motives. So I'm a very big Clayton Christensen fan, right? Jobs to be done as a framework. From that, we know the pain gain states that they want to either alleviate or get to. Then we have to create some kind of a story that says, we've got a solution for you. And that's, of course, that big idea, the big idea, the key messages, and then eventually the value propositions that we say we have for you all wrapped up in a story. And that's circle number 2. So it fits into circle 1, right? And from that big idea, key messages, story, value propositions, we will build a product stack. And that product stack is, it could be everything from little nibbles to full meals to desserts, all these kinds of things, just to try out, maybe these guys know what they're talking about. Let's do something that we can do a trial purchase into the relationship to experience the breadth of what they do. So if you're in wealth management, for example, the last thing that most people are going to be jumping to you to do is to turn over their $10 million portfolio from somebody else that they've never heard heard about you before, right? But some kind of a small nibble might work. Give us $1 million, give us 100,000, and let's see what we can do with it over the next couple of years. And we're going to do this in very specifically a conservative or a high-tech portfolio, but that's the nibble. So that product stack where we are, easing them into the relationship as we prove the value propositions buried in the product, getting you deliverables and results, that is the key to this entire thing. That's the absolute key.
Yeah.
From that product stack, we go to an offer stack. So here are the products. Let's make it seductive with an offer. What's the make it easy to switch offer? What is the make it easy to start offer? What is the high core value offer? And you're doing all the offers are such a big deal. People don't spend enough time really researching how to position the offer. They might try and position the product, right? But now the offer is that initial unlocking of that brain, of that prospect's mind to say, let's try this. The offer makes sense. Low risk, high value.
I want to jump into this difference between the product and the offer of the product. Can you just define that a little bit? Because I think that's an important differentiation there.
Well, let's talk about your podcast.
An example as well, yeah.
Let's talk about your podcast. Okay? So here's, you and I met a few weeks ago online. So we traded emails back and forth, and here I am on your show. Now, your podcast, when you researched me, I researched you, and it looks like the product fits the story. So the story's here's the product, you have so many episodes up and running, all this kind of stuff. Now we get into the offer. And the podcast offer can be something as simple as this. And perhaps the biggest one is a time variable. And in this case, you're in South Africa. I'm in Alberta, way up here in Canada. There's several time zones between us. If this is probably like, what time is it in South Africa right now?
Yeah, just going on 7 p.m.
Yeah, and so it is now 10 a.m. In Alberta, right? If we can't get that part of the offer right, the product doesn't begin. The service doesn't begin. Other examples might be this. For example, I just threw out my shoulder the other day, right? And my normal, pharmacy is just 5 or 6 blocks away. But my physiotherapist says I got the best compounding pharmacist for pain relief in the province. And we really should do that. Now, here's the thing with this. I said, well, can we do it at Rexall? Can we go over to the Rexall? They got all my history. Well, what we can do, because these guys are so good at compounding, I'm going to get them to refer all the details to your pharmacist. But you know what else they'll do? They'll deliver right to your house. You mean I don't have to go anywhere? No, they'll come right to you and deliver it. So a key part of that offer is not the compounded drug. A key part of that offer is deliverability.
Come to your house. Yeah.
Right? So the product is pain relief through a compounded product. But the offer is beyond that. It's the jacket around it. And everything from who, what, where, when, and why.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. And I think that's something that that must frustrate the heck out of a business owner that knows that their product is great. They know it is. They've done the research. They know the data on why it solves and how it solves, but the offer is not there. The fact that it needs to be in a nice, dinner jacket. Okay.
Well,
So there's making sure that this product is great, of course, and it's some testing, some nibbling, and it's offered in a way that's great. I kind of interrupted you on your 5 circles in the Venn diagram. Where are we at now?
So the product without the offer, there's nothing to buy. Mm-hmm. You can't buy it. I don't know how to buy it because I don't have an offer. And if the offer sucks, right, then I'm not buying either. It doesn't matter how great the product is.
I think if sucks is anywhere near your business, it's not going to work.
Well, it doesn't matter how great the product is. The offer is as much about the purchase decision as the product itself is. In fact, it's probably more about the offer than it is about the product. And then the final thing.
I'd agree with that, yeah.
So we got 4 circles so far. The 5th circle to tie everything together, sweet spot in the middle, Venn diagram. The final one is bridges. And the bridges is how do you now take that message and the product into the prospect's home, place of business, where they can actually take delivery of either the message, which might be Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, or the product, which might be home in a shopping mall, at a Tupperware party. That is part of the bridge for the Tupperware organization back in the 50s and 60s, right? Home parties. So those distribution channels for message and product are just important. And unless you have these 5 circles integrating together to create a sweet spot, you don't have any sales.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's lots to unpack there. And, I think particularly the offer piece is just coming back to me again and again. And I'm curious about how you help a company with their offer. What is the process? Do you A/B test? Do you send out pamphlets? How do you know that this offer is working? Have you got these 60 clients that you can test out different language?
Yeah.
And is there something that you found, some frame, some sweet spot in the offer and how you offer something that gets better results?
I think there's, if we go through it, there's only so many kinds of offers you can make, right? Mm-hmm. But then the hybridization happens in the details of the product or the details of the delivery or something like that. So the offer itself has to be very tight, concise, because you only have so much real estate to play with when it comes to your advertising, your message delivery and such, right? Email may be slightly different, but you don't want to bore somebody reading 80 paragraphs in an email. So it's got to be a nice, tight offer when it comes down to it. But, ultimately it comes down to some key things like timing, channel. It comes down to, the actual unpackaging. Like can I sample something before, or do I have to wait till it's already done? There's so many different aspects that you will have to it. Like we have a e-commerce purchase path that we run all of our merchants in our programs, whether it's the agency or merchant mastery. And I think there's about 8 stages in that e-commerce purchase path. It's our version of a customer journey. But one of the key ones now that we're really having a lot of fun with and getting a lot of lift is in the unpackaging. And the unpackaging, make that unpackaging when it comes to it, don't give them a cardboard box, make it an experience. Yeah. Make it an absolute experience when it comes down to this. And that's how you get that initial emotive impact saying, I got to do this again.
Yeah.
I have to do this again.
One of my secret indulgences on YouTube is a show called Unbox Therapy.
Yeah,
I don't know if you've seen that, but all about the unboxing, all about, which, and of course Apple has this pretty well done. Maybe that's just the power of their offer and the way in which it's impacted me and my memories. That you're talking about a great unboxing experience, and I'm
it's seductive, and Apple makes it a seductive experience, right? Absolutely.
You mentioned buying stages as something as a reference point to helping companies, as a touch point, as a way for a company to think about where it is either winning or not winning. Can you help me understand what you define a buying stage as and how you use it to help revenue growth or sales with companies you work with?
The most buying stages are very much tied to the customer journey. So imagine and it's the simplest customer journey in the world is attention, interest, desire, action. There's the old ADA formula, right? And if you take a look at it, that's basically the customer journey, and it's also a formula for sales copy. When it comes down to, so all we're trying to do is, where is the customer in the journey, as they're ascending into a level of trust and imagination and emotional drive to do something. That's what you're doing in the customer journey, right? And then eventually the product gets there and either fulfills their expectations or it doesn't. And then you start again. But the opposite of that is, if they are in the consideration part of that buyer journey, then the sales aspect of that, the customer journey, the sales aspect of that is, how do I make it as easy as possible for them to consider it? And that is as much a part of the sales stage as the final exchange of cash. And the exchange of cash is just the beginning of customer lifetime value. That initial purchase, right? Because if the fulfillment of that desire and that imagination doesn't take place in that customer experience afterwards, there is no coming back, and your CLV is not going to be very high.
We spend as much time as we need to defining terms on our podcast, because perhaps you'll agree that in the world of marketing, there's just so much jargon. There's just so many different perspectives. Somebody says one word and 5 people are thinking of different things. So thank you for clarifying the buying stages and kind of how you use them. I will also then lean into, you mentioned CLVs. Can you define that and just clarify what you mean by that as well for anyone that's unsure?
Well, and we're building out a whole module around CLV in this process. Well, here's the thing. So customer lifetime value is basically defined as how long you will possess the relationship with that customer after the initial purchase. And so you have different types of customers as well, right? You have customers that absolutely love you, at the very top, and you might have 6 or 7 different types of customers in between. And at the very bottom, you have people that, I only bought it because it was on sale. I'm never going back to those people again. So the customer lifetime value as the person at the bottom is pretty much that first purchase, and that's it. So it's really tough to make a solid lifetime margin on that. But at the top, you might have somebody who stays with you over 7 years, on an average lifespan, and purchases from you every year $300, $800, $1,000. Like if you're a golfer and you are going to strike up a relationship with your neighborhood golf pro and a shop, you might be in there exchanging cash with them every year for the next 15 years. That's possible, right? And buy all your equipment there, and buy all your apparel there, and play all your golf there, and things like that. So when you do all of that, you're going to find that some people are just beginners. They came out for a couple of lessons, and other people graduate all the way to the top. They are absolute golf aficionados, and they bring their friends. And so we take all the costs to acquire that customer, every single cost. So all your advertising costs, all of your sales costs, all of your marketing costs for your marketing team, One of the mistakes that people make is that they only factor advertising costs per se. That's just a small part of it. There's a big machine here to
human resource.
Well, human resources is probably not a part of that because it's more of an enterprise type of thing. But definitely the sales and marketing teams for sure are going to be part of it because that's how you are bringing the customer in and selling them something and hopefully continuing to sell them. So you take all of that, let's say your best customers at the top tier are going to buy, and I'm going to make this easy, $1,000 a year from you over the course of, 7 years on average stay. That's $7,000. Your margins are, I'm going to make it easy, 50%. So that means each customer is worth $3,500 in revenue less margin. Less expenses for you, like direct costs. And then you subtract out your cost of acquisition, which includes all your sales, marketing, and advertising costs, all of that. And so you might say the average cost for that is $300. So your customer lifetime value, $3,500, less the $300 in acquisition, is now $3,200. Now, what's the insight in that? The insight in that is that theoretically, if you only have one, and we're really fudging the numbers here. If you only have one type of customer that's worth $3,200 for you, that means you can spend up to $3,200 and still break even. That's what that means. So it tells you the extent of the possibility of how much resources you can toss at the problem of customer acquisition.
Yeah, it's a sticky conversation where theory hits the tarmac, and this is a question that we field all the time. What should my budget be? What proportion of my income should I be spending? And so I think these kind of models can help with that. I was recently blown out of the water by some research that came out of the Nuremberg Bass Institute in Australia. This is Byron Sharp and his work, and he was talking about light buyers, light category buyers, and these individuals that we think might not be worth pursuing. And the case study that he looked at, and came out of research from quite a number of sectors, was Coca-Cola. And the fact that over 50% of their revenue comes from people that buy Coca-Cola 1 to 2 times a year. So there's this other side to the coin, which is also, if you have the reach and you've kind of pushed out this message to a mass market, then these numbers work in a different way as well. So I think, what is your perspective on that angle to it?
My perspective, and this shocks a lot of people because when they join us in a firm or they take our courses and such, and it blows their mind when I use the following line: marketing is math. Marketing is math. So you have to know your numbers, because unless you know your numbers, you can never be profitable. And so, and you have to have the granularity of the numbers as well. So I was with a client of mine a couple of weeks ago, and we're just sitting around talking, and it was, initial portions of the coaching, right? And she was telling me, our email really isn't working well, et cetera, et cetera. And she had a major liquor store, right? And she sends out one email to everybody. To everybody, right? And she thinks she's actually doing email marketing, and she is, but not to the level that you need to do it. Because the people that are buying the high-end cognac and the high-end spirits are going to be in a very different messaging category than the people that are coming in for the case of beer, once a week. And it's a different message, different story, different positioning that you have to have to this. So she might have to have 4 or 5 different outbound messages going to really stoke the fire of getting that email marketing to pay. But you won't know that until you analyze the data behind what's working. And she was she's kind of looking at me and saying, that's a lot of work.
That sounds like a lot of hard work. Can't I just send out an email? Come on, but I sent an email and I ticked my box. I set myself the goal. I have to send 1 email out per month, and I sent it. I think I really like that line. Marketing is math, and I think what's ironic about it as well is that marketing is a creative endeavor. We started this conversation talking about story. Story is not something that engineers sit down and build with right angles. And so there is this creative side to it, but there's also this very strong leaning into data and of course, probably a lean back into technology, because take that example of your liquor store. if she doesn't have a system that's tracking which items are being bought by which individuals, then she'd never know who to email.
Yeah.
So there is this strong depth in there. I think as we start kind of winding down here, because this is something that Clear Brand and your marketing perspective have very much in common, this evidence-based marketing. Have you seen any if you could only track 5 things, and I don't want to limit you to 5, but if you could only get 5 data points to work with a business, what would you want them to be? And by inference, there are you listening. These are the 5 areas that Kurian would recommend that you start tracking.
Sure. So one of the techniques I learned in the mergers and acquisitions business was to understand the business, because everybody thinks their business is worth $20 million, $30 million. It's a made-up number, and valuation is math as well. So we have to understand, how you are generating not only the revenue, but the income and the consistency of the income, and more importantly, the quality of that income. And the quality of that income simply means how reliable is that income coming in, right? So if I got all government contracts for a commodity product that I've had for 20 years, plus a 20-year contract, that's a high quality income. That's a very high quality income line, right? And that's what I mean by that. So one of the things we would do is do a till tape dump. And what that simply means is we take a look at all the SKUs that you would have sold over the last 5 years. And you only have to go 5 years back. Sometimes you don't have to go back.
So for those that don't know the frame, we're in e-commerce and we're in SKUs, which is itemized products for sale.
Stock keeping units.
Cool. Thank you.
So we have so you might have a few hundred SKUs, you might have a few thousand SKUs. It doesn't really matter. So we take the SKUs and we dump it into a spreadsheet, and then we run all sorts of different analysis on it. And so those SKUs are what generate the revenue and the expense line for the actual cost of goods sold and things like that, right? And we understand where the income's coming from. And once we see first of all, we can see seasonality in that. When are these SKUs being bought? What's the complementary SKUs that are bought with it? Who is buying the SKUs? For what purpose are they buying the SKUs, right? Like people just don't buy coffee. They buy coffee to get them started in the morning. They buy coffee for a client in the afternoon, right? At a coffee shop. So there's all sorts of motives for that. So we go through all of this kind of analysis, and we can quickly understand the actual character of the business. And the character is driven by the culture of the business. So 2 widget manufacturers on the same street doing a $10 million top line, $1 million bottom line will probably be generating that $1 million in very different ways because the culture is different. What they value, the central part of culture is values. What they value in client relationships, product quality, the way they conduct business is going to be very different. So you're going to have very, very different types of methods for generating that same $1 million bottom line on a $10 million top line. And the character of that is within all of these different understandings of how and why products are sold and bought by whom, when, where, and why. And why is motive. And so when we go through that, I want an understanding of why people buy from you. Okay, and just go through those 5 W's, just the way an investigative reporter would be, and truly understand the motive. Another one of these things that really blows people's minds when I tell them this at the beginning is that most merchants can tell me what they are selling, but they have a much more difficult time telling me why their customers are buying. And that's where all the lift happens. The lift happens is understanding the motive and then delivering more of how to make it easier to get that motive resolved.
Wow. Sage advice there. Great. So it's been a wonderful conversation. There's been a lot in it. I'm really excited for our listeners. If you're a listener out there that is working on e-commerce, on retail, on Shopify specifically, or anything in kind of product sales, I definitely think that there's been a lot of important things. So go back and listen to this podcast again, take some notes. If people want to reach out to you, Kurian, where can they find you?
You come to my website, strategypeak.com. And as I said, I wrote a book a couple of years ago called The 7 Essential Stories Charismatic Leaders Tell. And that'll actually give you not only leadership types of stories, but it's also very applicable. I just did a webinar for Shopify for their merchants, in their accelerator, in their incubator for this. And it's all about how to translate the stories to market leadership. It's the same stories. I will leave you with this one thought, Josh, and then we're getting a lot of lift, not in making our advertising better for our clients, but making the stories in the advertising better for the client. And so we're getting a lot of lift in this one category story, and that is the founder story. So tell me your story. At the very beginning, you're $1 million a year merchant. You are not a $1 billion a year operation. Or a multi-billion-dollar operation that has all these resources and things like that, and it's tough to differentiate against your products against theirs, except for one thing, you. So you are the brand at the beginning. The Boeing Corporation, which is a multi-hundred-billion-dollar corporation today, started with Captain Boeing back in the 1920s in Seattle. So everybody starts as an individual brand. And so these individual brand stories, the creation story, the struggle story, the salvation story when it comes to this, the profound insight story, as it applies to the lens of the founder, are very, very seductive and brings traffic in. Try it.
Very interesting. Yeah, very interesting. So check out that book. And thank you so much for being on the show. It's been a really insightful conversation. And I look forward to learning more about you and watching what you're doing. We're now connected on LinkedIn. I look forward to staying in touch.
Terrific. Josh, thanks for having me on your show.
Thanks for listening to the Clear Brand Academy podcast, where we take the mystery out of marketing and help you get more leads and sales with a clear brand and proven marketing tactics. If you liked this podcast, please leave a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you'd like to outsource your marketing to our team, go to clearbrand.com.